What are you known for?
I'm a line producer.
Tell us what that means.
Someone who actually knows all of the steps from soup to nuts, how much it's going to cost to do things, what are the legal entanglements that we're facing or we should be thinking about, what are the implications of timeline.
Welcome to the Epic Score Podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Shadid. This week, my guest is Bob Dohrmann. Bob is a very successful and busy executive producer of films. He has many credits under his belt that you would recognize, from A Star is Born with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, to J.J. Abrams' 10 Cloverfield Lane, to the upcoming Devil Wears Prada sequel. But no one ever handed Bob the keys to the kingdom. He worked his way up from the ground level. There are so many cool stories and parts to his journey. I've decided to split the interview into two parts. So today is part one. The venue for our chat today was the Village Recording Studio. If you're not familiar with it, the Village is a world-famous music recording studio in Los Angeles. The number of chart-topping music artists that have recorded at the Village is nothing short of incredible. And they were so nice to provide us with the beautiful Studio A for our chat. And don't miss our banter at the end of the episode where we dive into the wild and wonderful world of pumpkin racing. And I'll see you next week here for part two. My guest today is Bob Dohrmann, feature film producer, executive producer, and production executive now. Mm-hmm. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Yeah.
Great to be in this place. This is pretty awesome.
Yeah, you actually, let's talk about that just for a second. You have a cool experience here. What did you...
I have a couple experiences in the Village. The first time I was in here was when I was at UCLA as a student, and I was not in film or television, filming like a music scene. And they let the students do some recording as well, sort of turning a blind eye to what they normally do here, which is to run a business. So I was here and I had, starry-eyed kid with no idea of the history, except for what you could see on the walls, right?
What was your major at the time?
I was an English literature, economics minor kind of student chasing pre-law. And we're just here for a shoot, right? The day of stuff. And it was really cool. It's just like, I got to go into one of those storied places. When I came out, it was more storied than when I went in, right? Then we came back here in 2016 to shoot some scenes for A Star is Born, the Bradley Cooper movie. And with Stephanie, singing with him and recording here. And we were here for a few days. Film company parked in the neighborhood, taking over the joint, other people coming in and saying hey to them, like star level recording artists that were doing their own thing here. And this place can function so many levels at the same time. And then at the end of that shoot, we had our wrap party here because there's a great hall upstairs and it's a Masonic temple.
Yeah, the Village has two big sort of auditoriums upstairs.
Right.
And I was upstairs a little bit earlier today and it was just filled with music stands. You're like, oh man, they're doing some like pretty large format, a lot of musicians in here all at once, like a big, I guess it would be towards a classical recording. And you're like, that's pretty cool.
That's the thing where music and film and television production are very similar in that you can take any space, convert it into what you need it to be, and then take it apart, wrap it up, goes back to being the empty box or the somebody's house or whatever it is. They're very similar in that, and yet they're very divergent, different businesses that they work and progress on different paths, but they're very similar. The people in music think about what it's like to be working in film, and the people in film think about what it's like to be working in music. Working with a major recording artist like Stephanie and watching her team around her meeting her family, and how they talk about wanting her to be in two places to develop and flesh out her film career, which she has now done to a fascinating degree.
Right.
Like that mimics how we think about when we're in production. Like, God, wouldn't it be great to just be jumping onto the tour bus and go to the next place, and the sets are all set up and ready to go, and we do the filming, then it's all taken apart and we move on to the next place. And while we were talking, and I had that kind of conversation with people in our production team on Star is Born, and then realized, no, that's what we already do. We pack up our location and we go to the next place, and the riggers have set up the sets for the next day, and we filmed that place. So they're very similar. They're very parallel. And so coming back in here today is really cool because it's also, it points to that thing. There's differences, but there's parallels in so much of how entertainment pulls off what it pulls off.
You talked about UCLA. You weren't on an entertainment track necessarily.
Not at all.
How did you make the connection into entertainment? What were you doing and how did you get in?
I thought I was supposed to be an attorney because my parents are great role models in that regard. They're very successful. I went to an all-boy high school, and the priest who ran the theater program needed kids to come in and not be on stage, but to help build the sets and help run the behind the scenes. And I took to it like a duck to water, and it was fun. And it was like, I like creative problem solving. There'd be a problem that you had to deal with, and I could figure out what's the way to deal with this problem. And then at UCLA, while I was in what was essentially a pre-law track, I spent most of my time up at theater arts and the film school. And that way I found my way into an editing room and film projects several different times, learning about how a cam operates and then how to splice and bins, what bins are, right? But also like how to pull the gear together to support a one-person play in the park, so that like one of my girlfriends, she was an actress, and she would do these performances for kids at schools, and they bring the kids would walk over from their school to the park, and she'd do the Cinderella play or whatever it was, and need speakers and cables and power to some place that you had to figure out where to go. All that stuff, I was always behind the scenes. I didn't ever want to be in front of the camera, never wanted to be on stage, never wanted to be the performer. The one time I auditioned for a play in high school, my voice was terrible. It was obvious. It was like, thanks for playing. But
thanks for thinking.
Thanks for playing. But I was the go-to for lots of these projects because I was willing to like hump this gear around and drive, put it in my car, and just have fun with it.
This is actually the beginnings of what a producer does, in essence.
Yeah, but
but ironically, right?
Did I pay any attention to it? No.
Exactly.
Did I think that there was a future in the city of entertainment, the city that is the home of the major entertainment corporations? At that time, there were 6 major studios. There was all these music industry companies that were killing it. Friends of mine that were from my fraternity and at UCLA and that were not in the fraternity, there were people that were in music A&R. There were people in television production. There were people that work in music videos. There were people that were becoming cameramen or that were trying to figure out how they knew what they were after. And I was this kid from the West Side who was like, I'm going to be a lawyer, but I really like what you guys do. That's great, but I'm going to go do this thing that's going to really be a living and really be a reliable thing. That's carny work.
Right.
But the thing is I was really drawn to the carny work. It wasn't the element of like the fun of putting on the show. It was the problem solving. It was
there's a million logistics that have to be figured out for any production.
Right. And one of the things I learned from my family, and one of my aunts in particular, is that the worst thing you can do is panic and try to make decisions. The screeching and the craziness and the freaking out is the worst approach to a problem. What you need is calm, cool, collected. And that is my wheelhouse of personality. I'm very calm in the face of most situations.
What would you say, as college wound down, what was the first sort of opportunity to do that post-college?
What I thought was the right path was to be the pragmatic, go to law school, and law school is going to be great. Not paper chase maybe, but you're going to get the opportunity to learn the law and think about ways in which you would approach an argument and how to defend one side against another, which is the way I was raised by my parents. They would argue at the dinner table, his perspective, her perspective, and then they would flop at some point in the middle of this conversation because their dynamic was to just have an argument and see who could win. It didn't matter which side they were arguing. And I thought that that's creative thinking. Well, They were many years down the road into their practice of law. I didn't get to see all of those early years of the rote memory and the working as a junior for years in the dark, and then maybe you're going to make it out of that darkness to something else. I got to law school and it was, this is all we want you to do, and don't think outside the bounds because you don't have time. There's so much to learn and you've got 3 years to do it in. And I realized I'm not really liking this. At the same time, I was watching my friends who were working their way into the business on the entertainment side. They were working cool music video shoots. They were working in television shows. They were getting paid. Turned out not to be that much, but at the time it seemed like they were getting paid, right? And I was essentially I was on my parents' dime because I was going to school. And I realized that wasn't me advancing me. It was me just advancing what I thought everybody wanted me to do. It was sort of the end of the first semester while we were going into exams, and into the second semester, I started taking PA jobs at like Thursday night, weekends. You get paid cash. And what was interesting was I didn't have a problem subsuming my ego to these wacky people that were like, get over there, grab a broom, go sweep up the broken glass. Well, the broken glass is because some rapper just threw the bottles into the fireplace. I'm technically in law school, although I'm halfway out, and I'm over here sweeping up broken glass. I realized I didn't really care that much. I wanted to learn who's running this show. Where's the money being made? Because it seems like it's really diffuse, and the celebrities and stars, they're sort of there also reporting to somebody else's clock.
They're making some money, but somebody else is making points and percentages.
Right, exactly.
And it's all kind of seemingly vague at times. Right. But somebody's making big money.
Yeah. That thing about trying something new, that was interesting to me. I quit law school. My parents freaked out. They thought, what the hell's wrong with you? What are you talking about? What are you going to go do?
And you're going to go make $50 a day doing something?
I went and got a job in sales. Friends of mine that were in sales that were not any of this stuff. They're like, you have a good personality. You're good at warming people up. You can integrate conversations. You can follow different threads. You can be interested in a wide variety of things. And there's all kinds of personalities. So I got a job in sales for this company called ChemSearch, and what they sold were essentially solvents, cleaners for the industrial workspace. And the job was to drive around, cold call all kinds of industrial and commercial spaces in LA area and sell, right? And I was like, I realized in that job, I'm not really a salesman. So I quickly got out of sales. And a friend of mine got me a job working for a game show producer. And the game show producer's world is you set up chairs in a ballroom and you have a game that you pitch to execs. And they come and they do these pitches, monthly. Whenever he's got a new idea, he brings in some game players, never celebrity level, but they're like pitching games, right? And if that gets somewhere, then he gets some money and he can put on not a pilot, but like a fake stage version of it. So I got to be a PA for somebody who was pitching shows, right? At ABC Prospect. And ABC Prospect is an old studio in old East Hollywood, tucked back in there in the foothills below Los Feliz. And it's really a cool old studio. Prospect was the place you could walk around. They had Days of Our Life, or it was an ABC soap opera. I don't know. I got to work on that show for a little bit, like a couple days here and there. If you walked around the lot with an envelope that you were delivering to somebody's office, then you could get in there and you could start asking questions like, what are you guys doing? What's going on? Do you need any help?
Push that curiosity, push the agenda.
Right.
Absolutely.
And out of that, walking around, I met people that were producing, and somebody introduced me as well, but to the Vin DeBona production crowd.
Funniest Home Videos.
And Funniest People. America's Funniest Home Videos was essentially it was advertised as a show where you mailed in your videos from across America and they cobbled together a show. Field producers go out and record people. And I got into those teams as a PA, then a coordinator. I got to work the camera for a while.
So this is where you're starting to
This is where I started. Like that, working for Vin DeBona's company was an opportunity to really get in with production people, with production managers and line producers who realized that you could give me a chore, you give me a task, and I get it done, and I'd be back and do it reliably. And then they could give me more, and they give me responsibility, and they could let me do stuff without having to watch over what I was up to. Right?
You're getting to prove yourself.
Yeah, I think more like thank God somebody we can trust to go do this stuff I don't want to go do, which is where I understand that much more now, because I need people to go do stuff and have them go off and achieve their goal for the day or for the show or whatever it is. And I don't have to watch over everything they do, right? I've made it to the place that I observed what they were up to and who they were. And I realized those are the people that sign the checks. They're the ones who figure out how much the check's going to be. They're the ones who they work with the attorneys to make the deals. They're the ones who say, this is what we need from that person to give them what they're asking for, right? That job in Vin's company was sort of where I started to realize, oh, they're going to give me more. And the field producers and the camera guys on that show would call and say, hey, do you want to come work on this thing this weekend? Some of those people pulled me off to work at Viacom on like MTV sports shoots, and a show called Roundhouse that was a Viacom show. And
so you're really coming up through television.
It's TV. Yeah. And Buna Murray Productions. I got jobs working for them on Real World, the season 2, which was in Venice, and Road Rules, the pilot season, when they went off on these RVs. I got to work a little bit with that crew. And then the very end, they sent me up to Seattle to drive the RV back. So
no job too small.
Right. It's like, but that's kind of the point. At the time, it was like, I no longer had my parents' support. I wasn't in school. I had to go find my way. These jobs in television, they're about 6 or 7 months out of the year. How do you fill in the time? How do you pay your bills, right? So I learned very quickly, you don't say no. If somebody calls, you say, yes, I'm available. I want to work. What's the job? What are we going to do? There are sometimes it doesn't pass a smell test and you're gone middle of the day, but that's a very rare event.
Right. There are things that are just simply not legitimate.
Questionable. But like when somebody calls, do you want to work on a pilot to go, we're going to go shoot a bunch of kids in an RV. You're like, yeah, sure, whatever it is. I got a call to go work with a friend from Loyola who was producing, he was like a production manager for a Mr. Bill claymation animation shoot. So I've across all of these different jobs, and this is the early 90s into the mid 90s, I've worked in every department except makeup and hair. I can say that I got a touch of everything by saying yes.
And what did that lead to next?
I started a production company.
Oh, you started
with another guy. Production management for low budget filmmaking, and really what it was, we sort of mimicked another company that some friends had been running, and they were getting out of it. And what the model was is if you were insured, if you had ability to set up accounts with the rental houses and the trucking companies and the whatever, you could farm your company out to filmmakers that needed to make a commercial, low budget shorts, student shorts. It's not very profitable except if you get 300 of those in a year. And we would do, over the course of a couple of years, we were 600 or 700 projects. We got to meet people like Beastie Boys. They were helping Ione Sky make a short. So like we're up in Hollywood Hills with them a little bit. And what we got in return was we got some production management experience. These experiences were sort of out of that thing of you got to create your own path. By that point in the mid-90s, I realized that, I didn't like the television business so much, and I didn't like reality. I don't want to be somebody who's feeding it up to somebody else. I want to figure out what my path is going to be and who am I going to be and how am I going to help the creative process and be valued for it.
So film is becoming, I'm assuming now, the next step of...
Well, that had a cachet to it, right? One, it was moving away from film into digital, but it was still called film, right? And film has a mystique to it about, when you can shoot on film and when you can shoot mixed media and you can bring the things together in an editing bay. And that was interesting to me. I'm not a creative. I'm not a person who is going to create the story and be the storyteller, but I've had enough time, and in this period I was learning it, but I've had enough time to learn how to help filmmakers and storytellers get that story point across.
Let's talk about that for a second. It might be fast forwarding just a tad, but what are you known as a producer, executive producer? What, when they bring you in to a film, because that executive producer or co-producer or these terms, they're largely vague in terms of, it doesn't mean a specific thing. I guess an executive producer could be given that credit because they were able to bring money or a star to a project.
All those things, yeah.
Right? What are you known for?
I'm a line producer.
Tell us what that means.
Someone who actually knows all of the steps from soup to nuts, breaking down the story that they want to tell, how much it's going to cost to do things, what are the legal entanglements that we're facing or we should be thinking about, what are the implications of timeline, figuring out, where's the right filming environment or where's the best business environment, where's the best incentive. And it's usually in concert with several other stakeholders. So a line producer's got their feet on several sides of several fences. You have to be able to diligently defend the vision of the filmmaker, the director usually, but you also have to defend the producer's perspective of what's the business, what are we doing this for?
Is it viable?
The finance side, which is either a financier or a studio. There's a bond company that's got to watch over and make sure that you don't go too far because they have to step in with their own money to fix it if you've gone too far. So you have to be bondable, is a term. All of those things are related to your experience. Do you have enough experience to be the adult in the room for these conversations and then go follow the marching orders and be able to reflect when the marching orders don't reflect the plan, right? There's that, getting to that point, and what the title is, those are different elements of creating yourself, right? You have to figure out, there's hundreds of line producers, there's hundreds of different ways to do it because no project is the same. That's what I like. I like that every project is sort of like a startup. You get handed the project, you've got to figure out how to get it going. You got to get it to a certain point. You've got to get the story completed and handed to the post-production group.
The person in your position, you get this script and there's like one sentence and you're like, oh my gosh, that's going to cost $20 million to shoot.
Roman chariot race. It's the most expensive 1/8 of the page ever. That most expensive 1/8 of the page happens more often than you think. Yeah, you get that.
And so you're sort of in that bad guy position, like, hey, everyone.
Yeah, there's definitely versions of this job where you are the no. This is the latitude you have, and you can't go beyond this latitude. I'm going to just have to tell them you've gone too far if you go step over that line. Those are combative personalities. Sometimes creatives need a combative personality to keep the thing moving together, or sometimes combative personalities working together actually find a way to get to the right result. And so very often, pressure on a thing makes the diamond a better version of itself. I'm not a combative person. I'm wired towards pleasing to success. My approach is that every job is an audition for the next thing. And if you do not have a good experience, that thing is not going to help your resume. You're not going to get a good reference to get another job. So this thing you're doing now is the primary focus. It has to work. It has to be figured out. It has to succeed, or it has to at least be good enough that they want to release it and try to make money off it, right? And if you do not achieve that, why is anyone going to hire you again?
What was the first project that you were given full line producer, like, okay, Bob, you're the one making this one happen? What was first film project that you were given?
Sunshine Cleaning, independent movie made in New Mexico. Producers were the people that made Little Miss Sunshine. I worked for them as a production supervisor on that movie. Another line producer brought me up, right? My mentor, a guy named Michael Bug, who's got a great resume of feature filmmaking and great filmmakers. He saw in me a person who should be his supervisor and train up to be a UPM and a line producer. What I found is by working hard and by being there and being responsible and stepping up when something's gone wrong and saying, yes, this thing happened, this is why, and this is how we're going to try to fix it, not just running away or pointing fingers and playing the blame game. People that I work for on projects refer me and pull me into other projects. And so you're sort of building off of your reputation and they're seeing it. And it's been the way to work my way up.
What was the progression into Warner's? Because you did the Warner's thing for some time. Yes?
Yeah. So that thing in the 90s of starting my own company, we were working on documentary style storytelling, and we were doing these music interviews, like interviewing bands and coupling those interviews with recordings of them from the 60s and 70s, and those were being sold on Laserdisc. And I had a partner in a company called Mad Molly Productions because my dog was named Molly, and it was my company. He was a director. He had some commercial connections so we made money on commercials. Then we met this music contact, a producer who was making these things for, I don't know if it was Atlantic or A&R. They were making these Laserdisc releases, and so we were the production arm. And we were working on documentary stuff and trying to get into long form. So we were working on scripts and trying to pitch and trying to figure out how do we break in, because we were just a production arm. We weren't really a creative arm. He was very creative. I was the business side. He was killed in a car accident. He was on a motorcycle at night and a drunk driver took him off the bike. And that next 2 days, it was like, what the hell? Where is he? We're trying to find him. His wife, they just had a baby. My wife, we were on the way to getting pregnant with our first kid. Both of us had bought homes. Like, we were doing well, and then we lost David. And the day that we were looking for him, these producers called me and offered me a production coordinator job, working on a movie, technically independent, but a Fox Searchlight project comedy called Club Dread with the Broken Lizard guys. Those are the guys who made Super Troopers. And this movie was being made in Mexico. So I could be a production coordinator working here, non-union, on a movie that's made outside the country. I used those days on that movie to get into the union. And so I started transitioning into long form. Really, I think David kind of in a karmic, like losing David, but somehow him or whatever helping, I still found a path. Like, he helped nudge me along some way. I don't know. I'm not a religious or a superstitious person normally. I can be a little superstitious, but like the thing is, like, I'm not that out on the fringe, but that moment is sort of a pivotal moment that got me into long form production. And it was working on features. The job for Searchlight, they recommended me to 20th Century Fox production teams and to New Regency. So I started working as a union coordinator on Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Man on Fire, a Martin Lawrence basketball movie called Rebound, and a bunch of reshoots at Fox. And through those reshoots, I met Michael Bugh, who was a line producer who was making low budget movies, features that were, festival fodder, could or couldn't make it to festivals. I turned him down for one job because I got a job for Fox on a Lindsay Lohan movie in New Orleans. I went down there alone while the line producer and the UPM were in LA trying to figure the movie out. And I set up offices, and the director and the AD came down for a scout. So I was kind of ushering him around because the line producer and UPM hadn't come down to the scout yet. And that not coming down for the scout, not being present, because they were dealing with problems, but they didn't realize that was a bad move. They got replaced. The new team that came in to replace him was from New York. That New York team said, bye-bye, LA guy, sent me home. It's first and only time I've ever been fired on a job. That movie was tough to do in New Orleans, and it was right before Katrina. So there was a lot of things that were going on there, and New Orleans at that time didn't have a big incentive. So I thought, I just got fired. I went home. It was my birthday. And then Michael calls and says, do you want to work on a movie with me as my production supervisor? And I'm like, yeah. You know, when someone says, do you roller skate? The actor says, yes, I roller skate. Then they go figure out how to roller skate. I said, yeah, I'll be your production supervisor. He knew that I was a coordinator, but that I had this production experience and I could step up and help him. I could be his right hand, which in production supervisors are people that go out and do the deals and read the legalese and tell the line, back up the line producer who's usually got their hands full with some other part of the project, right? So the movie was Thank You for Smoking, Jason Reitman's first feature film, and $7 million budget with a producer named David Sachs, who is a guy who made a lot of money in tech in Silicon Valley. He decided that, I think at some point he realized he didn't want to be in the film business, but he tried it out for a little while. He had a partner in Jason Reitman who was on the verge of blowing up as a filmmaker, and it was really good time to be there, right? And later, Jason, I think that he agreed. I don't know that I was his number one choice, but he agreed that I could be the line producer on a movie called Jeff Who Lives at Home that he was producing. Right out of Thank You for Smoking, Michael got hired.
That was Aaron Eckhart.
Aaron Eckhart.
Yeah. And
there's other very funny, great people in Thank You for Smoking.
I've seen it.
And Duvall. Robert Duvall's in that movie. So that was that. And that movie, you know, Searchlight picked up and, well, it went to play at Toronto and then it got a distribution deal through the studio. But right on the heels of finishing that movie, Michael got hired to do Little Miss Sunshine. And we did that movie for like $7.5 million. In LA in 2005, 2 movies for less than $15 million. You can't, that's incredible, right? But
that's like it's on sale.
Right. So I went from low budget where every dime counted to low budget features that were highly successful, but brought enough, you know, grit and grinding. We need to stick to the number. How do we figure this out? What do we need to tell the filmmakers they have to work with?
And you're getting a good reputation from these 2 films, I'm assuming.
But he's got a great reputation and I'm his guy, right? It's not about me.
Hopefully you're getting at least a wake of it.
But the thing is that but people are noticing that I'm actually very responsible, reliable. I know what I'm talking about and I protect them, right? And I don't go around loose-lipped. Out of those 2 movies, we went to New Mexico to work on Beer Fest for, again, Broken Lizard, the guys that made Club Dread and they made Super Troopers. So that's the second movie I've worked with them. And Beer Fest was fun. And that's the first movie I did anywhere that was outside of LA. Like I'd done low budget stuff and really low budget stuff in these movies with Michael. But now we're going to New Mexico. Now I got to say, yeah, I can go to New Mexico and make a movie. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And that's a Warner Brothers movie. And the production executive on that movie is a guy named Ravi Mehta. Ravi becomes the second most pivotal relationship. Michael's my first pivotal relationship. Ravi's the next significant relationship in filmmaking because he sees in my interactions with the various departments at Warner Brothers with legal and risk management and labor relations, that I know what the hell I'm talking about. Part of why I know what I'm talking about is because of that law school experience. Part of why I know what I'm talking about is because my father was a labor lawyer. So he represented the working man all the way through his career, always against management, always against business. He was somebody who was there with teachers and commercial food workers and UAW workers and Teamsters. And his law firm also represented, at one point, DGA, the Writers Guild, the animators, right? So I actually had this library of information in the back of my head about labor and about what's important. And so when I would write back to them with questions, or this is what I'm facing with this local business rep for the Teamsters, or how do we solve these problems? he saw that I was like, oh, here's somebody who doesn't spend a lot of money and is somebody that can speak for a production and I don't have to worry about them. That thing about I don't have to worry about this person. So Ravi starts hiring me on, budgeting things and let's figure out whether or not this movie can be made. He was the executive in charge of Warner Independent Films. In addition to regular Warner Brothers movies, he was one of the executives. They also gave him Warner Independent, where they were trying to figure out small movies that don't fit in the normal studio mode, but also could be, in the vein of movies like Little Miss Sunshine, big crowd-pleasing, entertaining movies with celebrities, stars that want to work on something that's got a story, right? It isn't a developed IP, the major movie. It's something that's got heart or whatever that thing is.
It's a riskier original IP, right?
For sure. And the risk meant they didn't spend very much money, and so they needed low budget filmmaking experience with a studio model. And how do you bring those things together? So I did a lot of budgets for him while also supervising other movies, like He's Just Not That Into You. So like in 2007, the producers of Little Miss Sunshine, they couldn't get Michael. He wasn't available, and they couldn't get another couple of producers who are equally busy at that time. And they called me about Sunshine Cleaning. I'd been to New Mexico. I knew where we could go make this movie. So we pulled it together. And that's a sweet little movie with Amy Adams, Emily Blunt, Steve Zahn, and Alan Arkin. We were making that, we were prepping that and getting ready to shoot that during Oscar season for Little Miss Sunshine. So filmmakers and the actors were going back and forth to LA on weekends, and it was kind of a whirlwind, but it was a great opportunity. It was my first line producing job, but also because it was an independent movie, I signed the movie up with DGA to get the director DGA status, and it got me into the DGA as a UPM. So this is a pivotal thing because as a coordinator in the union for coordinators, I had my health insurance. And when I was a production supervisor, I was always hired as a coordinator. So we had multiple coordinators, but I got my benefits that provided healthcare for my family, put money in the pension, right? So, and that's the core strength of the labor movement in entertainment, is that it provides, in a freelance world, it provides those benefits to keep families, the middle class, lifestyles achievable.
And they're incredibly good benefits too, by the way.
As long as you're working, as long as you put in the hours, and you have to work multiple jobs usually, because it's not just, you can't do like 3 months and get your health care. You've got to get enough.
There's a minimum.
And to do that, consistently means you're going job to job. You have multiple employers. My parents and their generation, you had one, maybe two employers in your lifetime, right? By the time that I got to this point with the studios, I could have had 30 in a year, right? Like that many different employers. But to get to the union model, it has a heavy cost, and it's become more and more expensive over the years to work with our labor environment, but it's worth it because you don't have to carry that full-time cost the way the old studio model had to carry contract players in the 40s and 50s, right?
Signing 7 pictures and
right.
all those commitments.
Well, you were locked in, but then they also had to pay you year-round. They had to pay all those people in the studio year-round. The big conglomerates relieved themselves of the full-time labor market, but they have to be in an employer-sponsored benefits program as the balance to that, getting that relief, right? So, as a beneficiary, right, getting into the DGA is the next level health plan and a better pension plan because it's better funded. It's not much different than the IATSE or the Teamster pension plan, the way it pays, but it's better funded. It's got a better management structure. Maybe that's because it's got directors who make a lot more money that pay into the fund, right? And the employers pay on behalf of directors and on behalf of other employees. So I got into DGA. That's the moment that my parents said, okay, now you're actually someplace that we can respect. So I left law school in 87, and this is 2007. So it took 20 years of really pissed off, angry interactions about what are you doing with your life? You're getting married, you're buying a house, you're having children, but where's this going? To then all of a sudden my dad saying, oh, DGA. Okay.
That's something he can wrap his head around.
I finally got to a place, and my wife, we were at dinner, and my dad had this reaction, and my wife was like, okay, finally, you're in good graces, like you're back. And so that's a very big moment to get that movie. Sunshine Cleaning was like a life achievement moment, because now I'm on that path. But it's a backdoor entry into DGA. Doesn't mean I was full-time, because there's these qualification levels. And so I had to do 2 more small movies that were started as indies and signed into DGA. It's called grandfathering. And there's not an automatic path. You can't just assume you're going to get another movie like that, because there's a lot of trust that's put into a person to run a movie like that.
So and that's my question. The next movie and the next movie. Is it a call that comes into you, or is it you putting some feelers out like, oh, I know this film is going to be done. Can I get on that? Or is it just strictly, we've heard about you, we know about you, and we call you to come in? What's the more typical way for a producer in that case?
The thing that worked was the calls came in because people referenced me. I tried calling around, but that never really led anywhere. I was not a big resume passer, because resumes are just a dime a dozen. They constantly come, right? You have to ask for the resumes. You have to ask for the references. There has to be a marketplace asking for a thing. And then are you within the bubble of potential candidates? Their names are being thrown around. And then are you available? I'm definitely not high on that list at that period of time of people to call and check out if there's a real job that's going to go. I'm in the list of people, if you have maybe something that might go and you need a board and a budget, you need a breakdown, and you don't have any money, or you have very little money, I'm the guy you call.
I could probably get this done for you.
Well, no, it's like, how much you have? Well, I got a couple grand. Okay, so pay me a couple grand and I'll do this work. It'll take me 3 weeks of time. 2 grand's worth like a week of salary, or maybe a week and a half if you're really parsing it out. But if you get a lot of boards budgets going, you can make some money in between jobs, right? So it tides you over. But also it puts you in the pool of, if one of those things goes, they don't have to hire you, but they probably will, because you got them to the point where you've shown them the path.
You're starting down, you've already started down the road. Right. Maybe you can keep going. But to be honest, there's all kinds of more experienced line producers always ahead of who's coming up. And those people, if they're available, you grab them first. That's who gets
right?
it.
Right? It's a waiting game. It comes slowly. But I got in DGA, and then I got 2 more small movies that got me my days to be third area. And as soon as I made it to third area, Ravi called and said, let's do a movie in New Orleans. And he hired me as a UPM only, no producing credit, on a movie called The Lucky One. It was a Zac Efron romance with a story based on a novel by Nicholas Sparks. Nicholas Sparks, he wrote a lot of books, and there's a lot of movies made off of his books about life in the Carolinas. We made the movie New Orleans. But that's what happens in the studio world, is where's the money best spent? It isn't always make the movie where it's written for, make the movie for where it's going to work, right?
We started to know each other back around those days, because from the beginnings of when I knew you, at least at the point that I started to really know you more, I mean, you were spending like half the year in New Orleans.
You spend a lot of time on the road, yeah. Mm-hmm. I came into this at a business like in the 90s when there was still a lot of television and film were done in LA. It was getting tired out a bit, but also there was just the beginnings of incentives to go shoot somewhere else. Not a lot of money, and it wasn't pulling the business away, but it'd be like, if you went to this place, you might get a break on your taxes. You get a break on the hotel costs and bringing the crew, and you get a different environment, right? That's the beginning of the incentive game. Just go, because TV movies and movies go on the road and they'd shoot a movie in New Orleans. And there was a hotel that was the Crew Hotel in New Orleans all through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, right? But at a certain point, those film jurisdictions realized they could bring the business with better tax incentives and provide jobs. And they became jobs programs, right?
I mean, New Orleans had a long run at it too, right?
Well, and they're still going. There's the shift of what's happened is more economic and business related. But at the time we're talking about, I'd been in New Orleans in 2004, right before Katrina. There was no incentive plan like there is. After Katrina, Louisiana realized they needed a job program. They bought in, and what they did is they retasked an incentive program they used for oil and gas industry for film industry. And it's really smart because what it did is it raised some eyebrows. I can make the movie for less, can lower the bottom line and get into the P&L range of what we think we're going to make on the thing. And we can go there, and there's some crew there. And we're going to need to take some crew. But as movies started being made in Louisiana, not just New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Shreveport, in between, they built up their film community. They had people that, there's a lot of people live down there who choose to work on what comes. And they're high quality filmmakers that could go anywhere. There's people that have traveled out of Louisiana when they were willing to go to work on movies elsewhere. ADs, art department, across the lighting and grip. They're really creative, smart, fun, and they're good personality people, right? So, but they stay home because the quality of life for them is stay in Louisiana, and the work started coming and coming and coming. So I would get on the road and go do these movies because that's where the job was. The risk is in our business, and like a lot of businesses, with a lot of travel comes separation from your family. A lot of families fall apart. Fortunately, I'm married to a woman who was willing to hold the fort, right? Because we were raising kids and we wanted them to stay in a place that was solid and trustworthy and know that dad was always going to come home. I think we built up resilient kids who understood that you had to bridge that time. Mom's going to be there. Dad's going to come home. I went home on a lot of weekends. I was diamond level with Delta for years and years because I fly back and forth all the time. Louisiana was kind of the place for 4 or 5 or 6 years, something like that.
I remember, we were carpooling and I was driving your kids to school, and
right.
And then it was like, oh, Bob's in town. He's driving today.
Yeah, you're right. And he's kind of kooky. He's weird because all he wants to do is talk and find out what everybody's doing in the car for that morning, because that's the time you get with the kids, right? And they don't want to talk to you in the morning, but you can get them. You got like 4 or 5 kids in the car. It was fun.
I want to back up. Before we were neighbors in our neighborhood, I got to know you in your previous neighborhood because you were doing the coolest community building exercise, activity. Honestly, I think I have ever seen.
Wow, that's cool.
Pumpkin racing. I'm going to look at the camera. Pumpkin racing. That was... Please tell us about pumpkin racing.
My wife is from the South Bay, Manhattan Beach, Redondo area. And there's some guys down there, old friends of hers, that were doing this thing, pumpkin races at Halloween on a hill in their neighborhood. And it was a big, fun street party, right? These guys have been doing it for years, and Tim Allen saw it, and Tim Allen pulled it on his show. So on a Tool Time thing, on Home Improvement, they did pumpkin racing, and these guys kind of helped that thing happen. And then when we moved up into the Culver del Rey, Vista del Mar, this area of technically in Culver City, we were in this great little neighborhood. People have been there for years and years and years, right? And so there's a lot of
cute little community.
And it's a great place for starter families and families of young kids, right? And so we were there, we had our son, and we're trying to figure out what's going to be fun in this community. And so I think we were in kindergarten at the school. I think this is when it started. We said, let's do a pumpkin race. We got neighbors together, tell families and your friends about the race. Here are the rules. We built a ramp because there's no hills in our street. There's no hill to start this. So we built a ramp, and it's sort of a street carnival, street festival. You have to get permission, permits to shut the street off so kids can be running around the street. We got the fire department, Culver City Fire Department, to come a couple different years. Later, we had like a guy juggle chainsaws and stuff leading up to it. But, it was essentially we wanted our homegrown carnival. And the way to do it was to make it about the family doing something together. So the kids and their dads, this is what was supposed to happen. Kids and dad are supposed to take a pumpkin, put axles through, put wheels on the axles, bring it out, decorate the pumpkin. You can't tie it to a skateboard. You can't fill it with concrete to make it heavier. All these things. And then race 2 by 2. It's sort of like slot car racing, to 2 at a time racing, and you go from 30 or 40 pumpkins down to the finalists, right?
It's a bracket.
It's a bracket. And then we had referees. So I was the lead referee.
Yes, you were.
Wigs, the shirts, the whistles.
You're in a referee, white and black referee shirt. You've got a big red curly wig.
That's one of them, yeah.
Right. I think that was probably the first year that we were sort of invited or told about it or whatever. And you've got this big, well, I don't know, maybe it was hidden at the time, but you had this big hammer.
Well,
so if there was cheaters.
You cannot. So it's a pumpkin race.
Here we go.
And there are going to be cheaters who are going to come out with a melon.
A watermelon.
Painted to look like a pumpkin. Because those are heavier.
That was one of my favorite moments in my whole life, I think.
So if you could catch, so once in a while the referee had to, pull the corer out and core the pumpkin to make sure it was a pumpkin. Oh, and if it turned out to be a watermelon, all hell.
The Fred Flintstone hammer came out.
So it was essentially a sledgehammer handle with a big log.
Big log. It was a Fred Flintstone mallet.
Log, right. Yeah. With baseball tape wrap on the handle so you could get a good grip, and then you destroy the watermelon in the middle of the street, screaming and crying about cheaters, and the kids would be, what the hell's going on? Oh my God. And someone would be crying, and then you'd have to cheer them up. But the whole we only race pumpkins, right? We created the cheater pumpkins.
Oh,
right?
I remember.
Nobody showed up with it, but the entertainment value was huge. And it was so much fun for us to do it just because we got a kick out of doing the thing.
Our first year there, we had no concept of the cheater watermelon pumpkin. So we didn't know. And, we're just on the side. We had brought our pumpkin, and I had done my homework, and I made my pumpkin, with the kids, and we crusted it up with jewels, and we were just going to race. I think we called it jewel encrusted pumpkin monster or something like that. That was our entry. And, this pumpkin rolls down the thing, and you get this funny look and suspicious look, and you're like, I don't know if that's a pumpkin. And I'm like, what do you mean I don't know if that's a pumpkin? I had no clue. And then you walk over and you just said, you cord the thing and you come out and you're literally holding up, it's a watermelon. And I'm like, what is going on?
And everybody's screaming, freaking out.
Crazy. Everybody went nuts. And I'm like, this is the craziest, this is the most awesome community thing I've ever seen. Yeah. And then that mallet came out and you smashed it. And I'm like, I'm sold. And
there was 150 people there.
Oh,
and that was the second year we'd done it, maybe, or third. So the spirit of it was for families to do that thing. There were some guys who took it very seriously.
Who was that?
And may have won it several years in a row because they engineered the perfect racer by running sample racers weeks before the race.
I was
sort of like an F1 style approach to the pumpkin races, and I'm looking at you.
Oh my gosh. I went and I bought the nicest rollerblade bearings I could find. And that thing went down the ramp like a rocket.
Perfect. But the it doesn't. The wheels matter. One guy won one year because he had saw blades. He had
the wood ones. I went up against him one of the years in the finals, and that thing was a rocket too.
The thing that makes it a racer that wins is getting the axles parallel.
Parallel axles, good wheels, whether they were those wood
But if
wheels.
you aren't parallel, you were on a different track, and if someone was straighter, whoever got to the finish line sooner, and sometimes they both didn't get to the finish line. Whoever got closest to the finish line was the winner and went on the next round.
Right.
There was pit row because after most races, the dads and the kids had to go over and fix something.
Yeah.
Whether it was the decorations falling off, or more likely, the wheels were jamming. And then what they found was the wheels would spin until the bolts tightened up, and then the wheels would stop.
Jeez.
And they're like, well, how do you get the wheels to free spin? Right. So somebody who engineered their pumpkin to win 3 years in a row in a father-kid race situation may have gone a little serious.
Sorry.
But also, I
loved it.
Yeah, and you were sort of the Darth Vader because everyone was like, oh, he's back. Okay, we're going up against... And we're going, it was still fun. It was still all good fun.
It was
right?
so much fun. I have some video. If I can find it, I'll sub it in on this.
There's some, at least there's pictures of me with hair, even if they are wigs. The Rastafarian wig, I had the Avatar wig one year, just because, whatever the thing was. It was Manny Ramirez one year when he was a Dodger. That was because we were playing really well. Or we had done really well. I don't know what it was, but
for anybody building a pumpkin, it's the weight of the pumpkin. A heavy pumpkin is going to go. Like you said, you can't put concrete in it, but it's harder to do it with this big pumpkin.
It has to be. You have to carve it.
You have to carve a carved pumpkin for sure. But weight, so the size, wheels, and like you said, it had to be parallel. But oh my gosh, the community building of that, and you guys put a lot of work into that.
That's fun.
And,
it was a good time.
Yeah.
And those families, there's several families in the neighborhood that were part of it. 4 or 5 or 6 of us, depending on the year. So it was us together, and then telling kids in our various schools, their families, and probably the most fulfilling thing out of the pumpkin races for me is that many years later, my son, who grew up he grew up in that neighborhood. Then we moved closer into the neighborhood with you guys to be closer to get to school because our kids were going to school in Westwood. He, from a very early age, was always going to be this thing. He's the kid who always knew he wanted to do this thing. He wanted to be a marine scientist. Within the first week of classes at Cal Poly, he met his girlfriend, and they're still together. The first Halloween that they celebrated together, she was on roller skates dressed like a mushroom, skating around the campus with him, and they were outside doing something. They were both living in the dorms at the time, first year. She said, the thing I miss about Halloween is I miss the Mildred Avenue pumpkin races. And he goes, what?
How do you know about that?
And she says, my parents, we used to go to the pumpkin races on the street when I was a kid, and I used to race pumpkins. And he says, that was my house, because the race was in front of our house.
That was my dad, like the big ref.
That was our race. That's our race. So then they both start texting parents like, hey, can you send us pictures? We start looking at pictures, and he says, yeah, that's Stella. And we find these pictures where there's this tall blonde girl wearing San Francisco octagonal glasses, hippie glasses, in cute little, Halloween, whatever she's wearing for Halloween, with her pumpkin at the ramp ready to go, and my son standing next to her with his pal Ben. And they're like not connected. Like he's just there because it's the races at my house, and I'm at the race ramp, and I'm having fun. It's kids all over the street, right? And he's standing there, and he's wearing a shirt that says, I'm a fun guy, with the mushroom on it. And she's dressed like a mushroom on Halloween, and they're getting these pictures. It was like,
like what, 15 years later?
So again, that thing that I was talking about, what is that thing it's not fate, is it karma, kismet? Is it what's bringing these things together? So that race, that thing that we did at our house helped our community, helped our friendships, helped make lifelong relationships happen for kids that we don't know. Like they went off and have their own lives, but they have that memory too, right? And our son met the girl, but didn't know he met her.
His life partner, potentially.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Right there, that like 15 years before is insane.